Well, hey, friends, it's Ron Deal, Director of FamilyLife Blended. Good to have you with us today. Last Saturday at Blended and Blessed, our worldwide live stream event. And by the way, if you missed that, guess what? We've extended the registration process because so many people wanted to get in on it after they heard about it and it was already over. So if you go to blendedandblessed.com, you can still register up until May 3rd. The video is available through May 3rd, so that's less than a week. So we'd love for you to get in on that. Churches who register at this point will have access to the video for a year, so you can use it in small groups as a small group series, for example, or you can do your own live event on the Saturday of your choosing. You can decide how to make use of that. Again, blendedandblessed.com. At that event last Saturday, we took your questions live through the app, and questions came in from all over the world. Lots of great questions. We didn't have time to cover all those, so we promised to do a series of Facebook Lives where we would try to address many of those. And I'm excited today to have Willie and Rachel Scott joining me from their home in Cleveland, Ohio. Willie and Rachel, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's always great to be with you again. Let me tell our audience a little bit more about you guys. Willie and Rachel are the founders of Better Than Blended. They have created several books and resources for blended families. They are yours, mine, and ours family with 7 children ranging in age from toddlers all the way up to adults. That's the definition of crazy, right there. You can learn more about them at betterthanblended.com. That's betterthanblended.com. If they're familiar to you, it's because I've had them on our podcast before. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the FamilyLife Blended podcast, please get familiar with us. We've had some really good ones. Theirs was one of them. It was on navigating your custody battle. That was podcast number 15, navigating your custody battle. Really, really good stuff there. And I just want to mention, speaking of podcasts, this week I released the podcast with Dr. Julie Slattery, where she and I were talking about sexuality in blended family couple marriages. And man, we've had good response to that already. It is a tremendously good podcast. So if you're not familiar with the FamilyLife Blended podcast, wherever you get your podcasts is where you can find that, but you can also go to familylife.com/podcasts and just click on the Blended podcast, familylife.com/podcast. So Willie and Rachel, you're my first victim. I mean, my volunteers to help us begin to sort through some of the questions that we got during Blended and Blessed from our live stream audience. And so we're just going to jump in and walk through a number of these together, and let's just see where that takes us. Does that sound good to you guys?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right. Good.
Ready.
All right. Good. So great question came in. Is there a point when a step parent should just withdraw themselves during visitation time, given the constant conflict and stress that they have with a stepchild relationship? So it sounds to me like the scenario is, whenever the child comes to their house, they just have a rough go. And whether it's, conflict between the two of them or just conflict in the home as the child changes the dynamic in the home and things get stressful. So they're saying, is there ever time I should just pull away and just try to disappear when the child is there? Let's talk around that. What are your thoughts?
I would say my thoughts are on that is, when you word it like that, should I just disappear when the child is here? My answer to that would be yes and no. Really more of leaning towards no, not disappearing. What's the heart behind the question? What's the motive or the thought process behind the question? Are you meaning that when the child comes, I'm pulling away because of the rejection, it hurts because I'm angry, or because I'm upset, because of those type of situations? I believe that as a couple, what we would do in that situation is have a conversation with each other, and to be able to set some self boundaries in place. Like if I see that me being in the picture right then and there is causing conflict, then Rachel and I would have a conversation, and I would learn how to kind of fall back or retract a little bit, not going into another room or not saying I'm just going to put myself away completely while the child is visiting, but I want to fall back so that she can start to build relationship and she can communicate, kind of set the tone, so then we can bridge the gap there.
Yeah, I think in a situation like that, it's important to know yourself and to know what it is that you're feeling in that specific moment. Am I feeling hurt? Am I feeling rejected? Am I feeling disappointed? Am I feeling this way because my spouse isn't responding the way I would like them to, or am I feeling this way because I feel like the child should know better and they continue to do this? So I think it's good to have, number one, that conversation between the two of you and set the expectation of how can visits look and how should they look so that I don't feel rejected or so that I don't feel as if I'm not valued during the time that I'm there. Right. I want to honor your time with your child, but I also want to show them and model in front of them what a family looks like and how it should operate. Right. And we don't want them to pick up any unrealistic things pertaining to how family should be. We still have the opportunity to model family in front of them.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is good. I'm hearing a couple things in both of you guys. So there's we need to have an ongoing discussion about what is happening and what I feel and what the dynamic is so we can try to work through it. That's powerful. And, Willie, what I heard in your comment was maybe a temporary step back would be a helpful thing to do in the conflict moment. But you're not trying to retreat forever and just go, look, I'm going on vacation for the next 3 days while the child's here. Because that sends another message, I would think, that would be even more detrimental, right?
Yeah.
I have found
messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found in relationships when there is a breach or there is a hurt, that sometimes stepping back, reassessing realistically what that relationship should look like in light of what the experience has been in that relationship, and then going back into it saying, this is what I can contribute. This is what I see they're willing to contribute. And this is our growth point, rather than having unrealistic expectations because this is what it should look like.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to point out too and she just articulated it better, that the goal has to be, we have to remember that the goal is unity. So if we're stepping back because the goal is unity, then that's okay. Like the goal is to move forward. So sometimes you got to step back to move forward. And so if the goal is unity, and we also need to know that the goal is order too. Like there has to be order established in the house. And it's not order in the sense of when we hear order, we think of like pound my chest type of order, disciplinary or a dictatorship type of thing. But no, we're talking about there has to be, we have to have boundaries set. The kids need to know placement. We have to have those things have to be discussed as a couple, but then also they should be discussed with the kids. And I may not need to be the one to discuss it with my stepkids. If Rachel may need to be the one to have that discussion, and then we come together and have it together.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was good. Somebody tweet, post, hashtag. Sometimes you have to step back so you can step forward. That was really good. Great. Let's move on to another question. Before I do that, let me just invite our viewers. If you have a follow-up question to the discussions that we're having, feel free to post that. And somebody will let me know, and we'll try to get to that as well. So again, we're going through questions that our viewers posted during Blended and Blessed last Saturday, April 25th. So let me go on to the next one here. I'm a stepmom to an 11-year-old boy, she says, that I don't like anymore. Now, first of all, I just got to pause and say, I appreciate her candor and her honesty. And there's no condemnation here. All right, girl?
Right.
At all.
Guess what? Sometimes with your own biological children, you don't like them anymore. I'm the dad. I have 3 kids. I can tell you that's the truth. All right. We're just being honest here. That doesn't mean you don't do right by them. Okay. Right. But let's go on with the question. So she says, this makes me feel ashamed, but it's the truth. My husband has put his son ahead of me and my marriage for the last 6+ years. How can I learn to like again the person who is in my place? In other words, and this, by the way, is the definition of jealousy, is when someone is in your place. That's what makes you jealous of them. You feel like the child holds that special place in her husband's heart or life, and she can't move into that. So how do I like him? My husband puts my stepson in front of me, and how do I wrestle with all these feelings? What do you guys have to say?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, it is.
I feel like in that situation, there are more components. It's not really just about the child. Mm-hmm. It's about the fact that she feels her husband is not honoring her as his wife. And when that becomes an issue, that's almost a separate issue in and of itself. And this is when I like to encourage people, and we've had to do this before. Let me separate how I feel about you as my husband versus how I feel about you as a parent. So when I do this mental separation, I can then address the issues separately. Okay, as a husband, these are things that I need from you. And as a parent, this is what I see. And so I can engage it and not necessarily compare the two, but I've created that comfortable line of separation to say, okay, well, as my husband, he's providing, he's taking care of me, we spend time together, we love each other. Is he really not doing the things needed as my husband? Even though when the child comes, I feel that he's not placing me a value. And then I can compartmentalize that and address the issue that is at hand. And it doesn't make him a bad husband overall.
So that helps you, Rachel, that helps you not disconnect so much, I think, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
It helps me not disconnect. And then I can begin to see the issue with the child and focus on the issue. Because right now what it sounds like the issue is that the child is in the place of the spouse. But there must be something else brewing there that my husband feels the child needs that much attention to that degree, and the attention that will be equivalent to what I'm getting as the spouse. So that's kind of what needs to be addressed. Is it because of the divorce? So because of the divorce, I feel like I did something wrong. So now I have to make up for that. What is the reason why when the child comes, they then have to be in position that I'm supposed to be in?
Yeah, and that's something that I was actually going to say too, is me as being the husband, if we were in that situation, I also need to take accountability for that. And in that case, Rachel can't, it's hard, but she can't take on, first of all, we need to get rid of the shame, because it's okay, like you said, it's okay to not like somebody because you still love them, you still would take care of them. But the other thing is, have to remember that I can't take on, or Rachel can't take on a responsibility of my actions, meaning, or my heart issue. Like if there's something going on in my heart where I feel, like you just said, Rachel, as I feel that the child needs more attention because of whatever reason, that I need to navigate through that. Now, what Rachel can do is she can bring it up in conversation and help me help me to identify it and help me to kind of dig deep into it to figure out like why, and maybe look at some alternative means and things that we can do. So I'm not shutting her out. But it also has, now what she has to do is she has to use a soft approach when she use a soft approach when she's bringing that conversation up to me, because I could be sensitive about that.
Right.
Sure.
But I also have to be open to that.
And I also want to say that finding one thing that you can enjoy with the child, whether it's we like to wake up and watch cartoons together, or we like to play games, or what is the one thing that you both can enjoy? And that way, if you do nothing else with that one thing through that day, you know that I've contributed to helping to the growth of the relationship.
Right? Yeah. Wow, man, I really appreciate the way you guys have talked around this. That's really good. Yeah, I want to come back to the temporary thing and just make one more comment about that. I think anytime you have a conflictual situation, temporary pullback is understandable. If nothing else, it helps everybody relax a little bit and not be so angry, and maybe get a hold of themselves and put on a little self-control. But you can't stay there forever. I mean, that just becomes avoidance. Now we're just avoiding the problem, and that's not helpful either. So,
and that's where resentment brews.
Right.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Okay, good. Let's move on to the next question. What would a co-parenting situation look like at its best when it is toxic? Now, let me just put a little context on this question. I think what they're asking is, we spent a lot of time talking about healthy co-parenting. By the way, we've got a podcast coming up with Jay and Tammy Daughtry on that very subject, and they just do a great job. But what if all the rules are off and nothing really works? You put on your best behavior and it doesn't seem to make a difference, and you just have this really difficult, toxic relationship with the other home. Is it sometimes best to just pull back? There's a concept called parallel parenting that says, well, you know what? You just do your thing and we're going to do our thing, and we're not even going to really try to cooperate. We're just going to try to not have World War III. It's the lesser of all the evil scenarios, and this just seems to be the way to go. I'm wondering what you guys think of all that. What would you add to the conversation?
So
I know Rachel's gonna jump in, but I want to say this real quick, not about that question, but I just want to say we love Tammy and Jay.
Yes,
yes, they're awesome.
They're really good. That's right.
So my thoughts in a situation like that is being open to growth. When a relationship of any sort is unhealthy and toxic, then it may require for you to pull back, and you have those boundaries. You engage as necessary when it's necessary, but be open to growth, because what I have found is that sometimes we put up walls instead of gates. And when we put these walls up, when things start happening that show that maybe the person is willing to grow, we're still in that moment of, well, no, because you did this, this, and this, and no, thank you. And instead of that, with a gate, we get to kind of see, look around, say, okay, it may be safe for this. And we still get to operate in wisdom. If we do put ourselves out there, try it, and it doesn't work, then we have a safe place to go back to. So those boundaries create a safe place, but a gate allows you to see what you may be walking into, and you can go back behind the gate or you can go in front of the gate, but a wall doesn't let anything in or out. So I would just, in a situation like that, I would just encourage people to be open to growth. Yes, boundaries. Yes, gates. When you see, I mean, the reality of these relationships sometimes is that they are toxic and they are unhealthy, and a lot of times, that's why people are not in the relationship anymore.
That's right.
But being open in that way is very critical. Being open to growth.
Yeah, I think parallel parenting is an option, but
Absolutely.
just as you said, if you make it a wall, then there's no possibility for improvement.
Right.
But a gate does leave that door open, and who knows? I mean, God still does miracles, right?
Absolutely.
We got to hope in the trust in that. Hey, we had a follow-up question that came in to our previous discussion about the stepmom and feeling like her stepson was ahead of her, and how's it? And the question was, is that a marriage problem or a blended family problem? And I'm just going to jump in and answer that real quick, and then we'll move on. I think the answer is yes. Ultimately, it is a marriage problem, but it is fueled by the insecurity and instability and ambiguity of the step-family relationship. So I don't think we can separate those two things out. It is both and a marriage issue, but it also is influenced by what's going on with the step-parent, stepchild dynamic there. So that's the way I would answer that one really quick. And by the way, I said a whole lot about that at Blended and Blessed last weekend. And again, if that's something you're just getting in on, you didn't know about that live stream, you can still get in on that for the rest of this week, blendedandblessed.com. Okay, moving on. How does a couple, this is interesting. This is the next question. I didn't even plan this, Willie and Rachel, but here it is. Next question really flows out of what we've been talking about. How does a couple make their marriage a priority without making the children feel demoted? What do you think?
Jumping on that?
You can start.
So one thing I want to do, I want to throw out there, Ryan, too, just piggybacking off what you said, just the previous question, is we have to also make sure we pay attention and identify the fact that if we don't handle a marriage issue, it can easily bleed over into the family. So we need to make sure we are handling those issues in the right amount of time and not leaving them swept under the rug, because then it will bleed over into being a blended family issue. So,
Good point.
But so as far as the marriage, how do you make your marriage a priority without making the child feel like they're demoted? So what you do is you talk to them very nicely. You say, no, just wait. No, what we try to do in that situation is communicate amongst each other. Me and Rachel, we will communicate on how we will go about letting the children know. Because I'll gently, when the kids come, we sit together, and this used to happen when we were younger, they will try to come sit right here. In some cases, I would be like, oh, okay, I would let it go. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I would kind of nudge that along. But then there's some cases where I'm like, buddy, this is me and mommy time. You can sit over here, you can sit over there. You can't get between me and mommy. And I'll do that nudge gently. And then as we go along, depending on the age of the children, you may have to have a conversation. And that may be the biological parent may need to have that conversation initially. And then me as a step parent or Rachel as a step parent, then we can come in together and have that conversation as well. And then we also have talked to our children just about the importance of date night, the importance of us being on the same page. Literally one time, and I'll throw it to you, one time our older daughter she came to us and said, "You guys haven't had a date night, huh?" And I was like, "Why you say that?" She was like, "Because we can tell you guys need to go on a date night." So she recognized the importance of date night because Rachel had a conversation with her and told her, "This is why we go on date night. And part of the date night, we talk about you guys. Part of the date night, we talk about us. We talk about work. But we're able to talk through some things and get that situated before we come back and we take it out on you. Just take it straight out on you guys." So
I feel like it's important to model. That's the thing that I think of in this moment is what we're modeling, what they need to replicate, because in these situations they've either seen unhealthy relationships, maybe didn't see the relationship at all. Blended families come from so many dynamics. So if we don't model to them that marriage is your number one and your most important priority, then they have no other opportunity to see it. Yeah. So we can't look at it as a demotion. We look at it as an opportunity to teach them so that they can know the value of it when they become older and they get married and they know, well, yes, I love uniquely. Each of my children, I love them uniquely. I don't love equally, I love uniquely. And it's so critical for me to understand that in that I get to model to each of them, and they're each going to pick something different up as to what marriage is supposed to look like. So really we're taking that as an opportunity to model marriage in front of them and the priority of marriage. And in that they'll understand, well, this is not a demotion. This is really my position. It's not, you're not being demoted. It's where you're supposed to be.
If done well, they won't even feel like that. Like if done well, they won't feel like it's a demotion, or feel like they're being isolated or they have less time.
But coming from a single, like if the parents were single prior to conversation, it is healthy to have that initial conversation. To say, I still love you. You're still my buddy, but this is my husband, this is my wife. So that conversation is good.
Yeah. So exactly. Even at Blended and Blessed last weekend, I talked about reassuring children, even as you nurture your marriage relationship. And that's exactly what I hear you guys saying.
Yes.
It's a both and, but I just want to be really clear with parents. The question is about how do I keep them from feeling something, feeling demoted? You don't keep anybody from feeling anything. Like if I were to say to you, I don't want you to feel discouraged about COVID crazies, about staying at home, or about job loss, or about, being cooped up in your house anymore. You shouldn't be irritated with one another. What's wrong with you? I can't make you feel or not feel something. Feeling is not the problem, right? Feeling's not the problem. The problem is when you get so afraid of them feeling demoted that you stop being a parent. That's the problem, right? So reassure them as you nurture your marriage. It's a both and, but they're going to feel it. And you love them through it. You hug them. You talk through it. You talk around it, just like you guys have shared. And I think that, in other words, it says, well, I'm still here. We're with you. Let's keep moving forward a little bit.
Right.
That's a good one. Okay, next question. Biomom bought her 10-year-old stepdaughter a new smartphone. So this is from the stepmother and the bio dad. So the other household bought the 10-year-old a new smartphone and told her to hide it from us and to lie about it. And the biomom and the daughter refused to give us the passwords so that my husband can monitor the internet use and the relationships and social media stuff that she's doing when she's in our house on our time. What should we do?
This is a good one. And it's very common, very common.
Yes. So, what do you think?
I think that in those situations, knowing what you have the ability to control. And in a situation like that, what I would do is almost flood them with knowledge. So sit the kids down. We will watch things that have to do with watching appropriate things, or how these things can impact them. A lot of times we don't necessarily have to say things outright. We can just put information in front of our kids. We can be responsible for the information that we put in front of them that lets them come to their own conclusions about things. And I have found that to be, especially for teens, I have found that to be so helpful to just let me present you with some information as to why this may be healthy, why this may be unhealthy. What are the later impacts of this? I may not be able to control you lying about it, but I want you to think about it when you go and you look at it, because you now have knowledge as to why I don't want you to, without me saying it to you. Just here, let me present some information. Let's just happen to watch this movie that talks about things that happen with the internet, or, you know, just something of that nature where it's more subtle, but it allows them to think, because we're not always going to be there to think for them, to take things away from them. So at a certain point, they have to begin to develop their own way of thinking and processing and knowing right from wrong.
Rachel, what I hear you saying is train their heart, talk to their heart. We can't control what their behavior is or what the behavior of the other home and the people in the other home is, but you can nurture your child's heart, and that's what will preserve with them when they go to the other home.
Right, because even if they do watch something wrong, what you want is that relationship where they'll be comfortable coming to you and saying, you know what, I remember you showed me this video, and let me tell you what popped up. You want to have nurtured that.
Right.
That's what you want. So even when they go away, they're doing whatever, they come back and they're like, there's this discomfort doing that there, because you establish your standards, but you've also allowed them to begin to develop their own conscience about it.
Good point. Wow, great.
I just want to add to that, on top of that, is not to be, I just want to say this too, so people don't get confused. Also, is not to be afraid to still set boundaries.
Right.
So we'll do that because we want the child to have their own conviction when it comes to some of that. But then there are times when we have to set boundaries, meaning, okay, if you know that they are not at that place yet and you have to monitor or you have to take the phone away, don't be afraid to say, okay, when you come home, this should be the bio parent in this situation. What we've done is I've said to, and, you know, for me, my previous wife has passed. So I was specifically dealing with maybe an in-law, grandparent when it came to a phone situation. And I had to say, okay, yeah, she bought you a phone, but you still have to get permission from us to be able to utilize it. Or when the phone is here, we don't have phones in the room at night. The phone needs to be on the counter. You have access to the phone if you want to pick it up and give her a call, but the phone needs to sit on the counter, and you don't need to have it in your room again with door closed or anything like that. So we still have those boundaries set.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And I know somebody's watching right now and they're going, yeah, but then that makes us look like the bad guy and they look like the good guys. And, you know, yes. And from some perspective, that's true. But, you know, your child has a whole world of people that are the good guys and you're the bad guy. If you have any boundaries at all, as soon as they hit 7th grade, they're going to learn that other people don't, and that the world lets, right? So, okay, this is life. We train and equip our kids to go into the world, and we do the best we can with that. And we love them. And we, as Rachel said, we want to stay in relationship with them so that if something happens, we're still an influence in their life. So don't make it World War III, but at the same time, be the parent and manage your home the way you feel convicted to do in a loving way. Great advice. Good stuff. I'm watching our time, and boy, we're going to do one more. We've got so many more questions that people ask, but we'll have to save those for another Facebook Live. By the way, let me remind you, these are questions that were posed during Blended and Blessed, the worldwide live stream last weekend, Saturday, April 25th. You can still watch that live stream through the rest of this week. Churches can purchase the ability to keep it for a year and use it in small groups. Just go to blendedandblessed.com. We're going to do these Facebook Live Q&A sessions for the next 3 more weeks after today. And so join us every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So let's do one more. Essentially, this last question that somebody asked is they're basically discouraged. You know, they keep hearing things like, quote, people in second marriages should not expect to achieve the same level of happiness as those in a first marriage. And this person's saying, it's sad and this is discouraging. How should I feel about all this? Boy, you know, I was sad just even hearing the question. I don't know what you guys think. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, who's telling you that? I hope you're not hearing that from me. You're not hearing that from Family Life Blended. I believe very strongly second marriages, third marriages can be vibrant, healthy, God-fearing, loving, redemptive relationships. Are there unique challenges to get there? Yeah. Are there some things that maybe blindside you didn't see coming? Sure. That's what we try to do, is help people see that, understand it, make sense of it. But my goodness, nobody's saying you shouldn't expect to have a great marriage relationship. What do you guys think?
So this reminds me of when Willie and I were dating, and I had that fear. You know, I had the fear of how will this turn out? I've been divorced. What do I even have the ability to have a successful marriage, you know? And
But
I remember an older.
And you looked at me and you were like, it's going to all work out.
Right, there you go, right. And I was talking to an older lady, and I just opened up to her, and she was on her second marriage, and she had been married for like 40-something years. And she just said, you know, you can have a beautiful and a healthy second marriage. You are equipped. You are able to do it. And God is going to walk you through the process of it. You don't have to walk in fear of what didn't work and make that what is going to be the determining factor moving forward. And she was just like, look at my marriage. I've been married for 40 years and I'm happy. And of course we've gone through life, but there are so many stories of success that if what we choose to focus on will become our reality. Right. So in that moment, I chose to focus on a marriage that would succeed and would grow. And so that's going to be my reality. There's no other option because that's what I chose to give my attention to. So I just want to encourage anyone that's feeling that way. I get it. I totally get that feeling. But what we choose to focus on, if we choose to focus on marriage growing and being healthy and being vibrant and doing everything we've been called to do in the marriage and loving our spouse and going around the world with them, that is what we will see happen in our marriage because that is where we're putting our energy and our focus to.
Yeah. So when I would encourage people too, when they hear things like that, those are, seeds. You plant seeds and they grow. So you have to, if you do any type of gardening, I'm not a gardener by far, but I've been in the yard and I had to pull up all these weeds. Rachel will tell you, like pulling weeds up. But if you allow a seed like that, like a negative seed like that to actually take root, then it's going to grow and you'll start seeing fruit from that. So you have to almost, when you hear that, you don't have to get offended from the person that's sharing it with you because they're sharing it from their own personal experience, maybe.
Right.
Like you can either encourage them for one, that can come out of that, or two, you can say, oh, okay, but you don't have to come into agreement with it.
Right.
You can actually do what Rachel said, like look for the punch bug. Every time you drive past, like as soon as you see a car, you're like, oh, there's a car. Now you know. You see that car everywhere you go. So just think of that. Look for the healthy marriage everywhere you go. And you'll start to see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's so great, guys. I hate weeds. Willie, would you come weed my yard?
Willie was out there sweating weeding.
Yeah, that was a challenge. That was my first time.
Oh my goodness. Well, listen, I hope you've enjoyed being with us today, watching Willie and Rachel Scott talk with me about questions people asked during Blended and Blessed. We have many, many more questions we didn't get to. We're going to do 3 more weeks of this every Tuesday, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. Gayla Grace is going to join me in the future. The Stewarts are going to join me as well, Gil and Brenda Stewart. So stay tuned. Keep following us here on Facebook. If you're not following us, man, just click in, and because we're putting out good stuff every single day, podcasts and different content to try to help and encourage and inspire you in your journey. Willie and Rachel, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having us. We always enjoy it.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to know more about Willie and Rachel, just go to betterthanblended.com. Thanks for being with us today. Take care and God bless.
God bless.